Greetings and thanks for joining us here on North Metro TV News. I'm Eric Nelson. Well, with Election Day now behind us, we have a clear picture of how local leadership will look moving into next year. Starting in Anoka County, there's a new sheriff in town. Former Coon Rapids Police Chief Brad Wise will take over as the county's law enforcement leader in the new year. He edged out Paul Lensmeyer in a close race with 51% of the vote.
It's a great organization that I'm stepping into, which is the best part of a race like this, and I'm excited to get to learn and know the people that work there. And they need to get to learn and know me, which will be part of the growing process.
For Anoka County Attorney, the race, not as close. Brad Johnson, who currently works in the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, garnered 64% of the vote. Wade Kish, who works in the Anoka County Attorney's Office, got just 36%. For the Anoka County Board, all 7 seats were on the ballot due to redistricting. However, we'll see very little change. In District 1, Matt Look keeps his seat after getting 66% of the vote. For District 2, incumbent Commissioner Julie Brastad was unopposed for re-election and will be returning for another term on the board. In District 3, Jeff Reinert is keeping his seat on the board with 57% of the vote over Cindy Hansen's 42%. On to District 4, it's incumbent board chair Scott Schulte with a convincing victory over Metropolitan Council member Raymond Zirin. District 5 had the closest county board race we saw, but incumbent Mike Gamache will be returning to his seat with 53% of the vote. District 6 was the only county board race without an incumbent and the only seat that changed hands. Current Blaine City Council member Julie Jepson will be joining the board. She got 56% of the vote, defeating former Blaine City Council member David Clark.
I think people were ready for change. I think people really want change. People understand how, more so now, how local government really impacts their daily lives, and they weren't happy with the way things were going and they needed change.
Now Blaine will need to have a special election to fill the remaining 2 years of Jepson's seat. Finally, in Anoka County in District 7, it's incumbent Commissioner Mandy Meisner with a convincing win over Joseph Sturdivant. Moving on to city races, in Blaine there were 4 council seats up for election, and the council will be seeing 2 new faces. In Ward 1, incumbent council member Tom Newland, who was appointed to that seat earlier this year, beat out Scott Rosahoski with 59% of the vote. Newland will serve another 4-year term on the council. Ward 1 also had a special election for a 2-year term on the council. That seat goes to Lori Soroya, who squeaks by former council member Dick Swanson with a margin of just 74 votes. Soroya becomes the first Muslim and the first woman of color elected to the Blaine City Council. Ward 2 had a much larger margin of victory as incumbent council member Jess Robertson got more than 70% of the vote. And in Ward 3, there was no incumbent on the ballot because Richard Paul did not seek re-election. It will now be Tara Fleming in that seat. She knocks off Al Garaki with 61% of the vote. On to Centerville, where there will be no changes. There were no challengers, so D. Love remains as the city's mayor. And Michelle Laxo and Darren Mosher will stay on the council. Ham Lake had incumbent Mayor Brian Kirkham unopposed, and he is returning to office as well. For Ham Lake City Council, the incumbents will be returning to office. Jim Doyle and Al Paranto defeated the challengers, Rory Green and Corinne Seltz. In the city of Lexington, there is going to be a new mayor. One-time gubernatorial candidate and current mayor Mike Murphy is not returning to office. It was close, but the ex-fire chief Gary Grote wins it 50% to 49. That's just 12 votes, but it's not close enough to foster an automatic recount. No change on the Lexington City Council. The 2 incumbents seeking the 2 seats are coming back, Robert Benson and Kim J. DeVries. Meanwhile, in Spring Lake Park, there were 3 candidates running for mayor, and the incumbent, Bob Nelson, will go back to office after receiving nearly half the votes. He defeats current council member Barbara Goodboe Bischoff and former candidate for State House Anthony Wilder. Spring Lake Park also had 2 council seats on the ballot, and only one incumbent is returning. That's Ken Wendling. He serves another 4-year term along with newcomer April Moran, who was the top vote getter in the contest. The Centennial School District had 3 seats up for the regular election with 5 candidates on the ballot. The winners are Gloria Murphy, Jessica Schwinn, and incumbent Tom Nisley. For the district's special election, it will be Craig Johnson joining the board with 52% of the vote. At the state's capital, every seat was on the ballot this year. In District 31B, it's Republican incumbent Rep. Peggy Scott returning to office with 68% of the vote. District 32A has incumbent Republican Nolan West defeating Democrat Ashton Ramsamy with a 15% margin. 32B has a change. Incumbent Republican Donald Raleigh was defeated by DFLer Matt Norris in a close race, 51 to 49%. In District 36A, it'll be Elliot Engen of the GOP going to St. Paul after his narrow win over Susie Strom. And in 39A, incumbent DFLer Aaron Kegel got 63% of the vote compared to Rod Sylvester's 37%. For the state Senate, starting in District 31, Republican Representative Cal Barr will soon be Senator Cal Barr after getting 64% of the vote over Jason Ruffalo. On to District 32, it's Spring Lake Park School Board member Michael Kroon after a close contest with DFLer Kate Luthner. District 36 saw DFLer Heather Gustafson come out on top. The newcomer defeated incumbent Republican Roger Chamberlain by about 2,500 votes. And in District 39, it's current DFL Senator Mary Kunesh easily defeating former Republican State Senator Pam Wolf with 2/3 of the vote. That's how the races played out locally, and that's a wrap on our Local Decision 2022 coverage.